We're live, and
There we
welcome
go.
to like, comment, and subscribe. You know what I mean? Hang out on the Reinin traits to sort of like show just how ILI Hailey really is. So yeah, these are traits that Grigory Reinin, a Russian mathematician, he deduced these traits, these extra 11 dichotomies from the original Jungian dichotomies, and all of these traits are mathematically consistent, but the mathematical model doesn't give any kind of indication of how well or not the options are defined. And Hailey and I have sort of been through this before, where certain of the descriptions for the various options might be a little bit off, but the actual mathematical relationship between them does seem to be there for some people. And when I've tested some people on this, it's like they fit. I'd say about a third of people like fit it spot on. I myself fit it spot on. And then other people who are a certain type, they just don't fit.
And Ben, do you think that's because it's just the way it's worded, like they're not understanding exactly?
Possibly, but I also think non-type factors can affect things a lot, as we've talked about the Ibrukiki, or individual social status, biology, relationships, upbringing, culture, education, career, and events. Dear boy, events. Right. So now we can show the test. I will.
So Ben, I remember we went through this a while back, and there was a few, like I had to ask you if you could give me like another example.
Yeah.
They worded it. Yeah, I thought a few of them were kind of poor.
Yeah.
So there might be instances where I ask you to give me another scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll cut him a little bit of slack because I think it's a Russian that wrote the site. The because it Zekilin.com did the I think people can see that up here, because I think they can see the whole. Let's have a look at mine. They can see the whole of the thing on the screen, I believe. Right. So what we will do is we will ignore the first four for now, because they're the normal ones. So for instance, because if someone put if someone said okay, the first, because then you're going to get, like, we can ignore, because like we're trying to test whether the actual reigning ones themselves, Hailey will get to the right, the type we both think she is. So we can come back to these later on. Because also what happens, folks, is say someone picks introvert, it then eliminates all the extroverted types. And what helps with this test is that these are the Russian nicknames for the types. Now this one here, Georgy Zhukov, that's the nickname for ESTP. And let's just say you've got to have a strong personality to stand up to Stalin, the Soviet dictator. And so very highly regarded in the former Soviet Union, Georgy Zhukov. And he used to ride around on a white horse. But it was like their sort of version of Patton, who was also an ESTP. Right, so we will go to static and dynamic.
Okay, well, I hope everyone can see them. I'm just going to remain quiet. Have your square clicked, so whenever I talk, I can't see anything.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Scroll it back down a little bit so I can see the first. It's kind of being cut off by my top bar.
Okay. How about now? Can you see static dynamic?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Or how about this, Ben? I'll click on your square, and when I'm going to talk, I'll click on mine.
Yeah, fair enough.
Cool.
Okay. Oh, yes, of course, because then you get to see more of it. Yes, bingo, yes.
Yeah. That's Okay, my first go-to is dynamic, but could I have you give me like for example, like an example, a dynamic person would do this or a static
Right.
person would
Okay.
do this?
Right. This was like really hard for me to understand in terms of, for ages I kept asking a Russian expatriate that now lives in the United States about how to tell the difference between static and dynamic in language. And eventually I got to a point where I could understand it. And this is a nice little thing where apparently static types, you know, say someone like Winston Churchill, ESTP, and it's like very short sentences and the sentences are complete. We will fight them on the beaches. We will never. So it's like each sentence is on its own complete, and it's like very short sentences following each other. Or like say Ernest Hemingway, very simple sentences. So it's like a static image. Whereas with a dynamic writing style, it's more like you have to sort of like all the sentences flow into each other, and you have to sort of like read the whole paragraph.
You know what though, Ben? I mean, I'm not going to click on my screen so that everyone can see, like, can read it while I'm saying this. But essentially, if I never ask you to give me like a different static and dynamic writing styles, like that's not included in this. So if I was just reading this on my own, I would have no idea. Like it's so much easier for me to pick this out now that you told me about the writing style.
Yeah, it's what it is. It's I want you to get to the right type rather than testing the test. I want to sort of like show the audience that you are NiTx, you are ILI, you are INTJ in MBTI. And we're going to be doing that by going through these options in the clearest way so they're honest choices. So do you see that in your own writing where it flows?
Dynamic. I don't write. I'm not a short to the point kind of. In fact, I have trouble keeping it short.
One of the things that can get in the way of this is that generally, I believe that, say if you were to look like a style guide, that I think they promote more of the dynamic style. And some people have said about, say, Hemingway, where they'd say things like, he writes like a child. All the sentences are short and all like that. But other people, said, oh, that's a simple, because he was a journalist. Hemingway was such an SP. He would like travel. He was like a war journalist and deliberately put himself in dangerous positions. I think he may have even covered the Spanish Civil War. I'm not sure. In the 30s. So he had very short style. So yeah, so you're going for dynamic. And the other thing is, how much time do we have, Hailey?
We've got enough time.
Right, because as we're going through the test, I can also tell the audience about what the dichotomy sort of mean, and static dynamic is an important thing. It's a very abstract thing. It makes a lot of sense for the judging functions. The sensing functions make a little bit, the perceiving functions make a little bit less sense, but it's very abstract, but I'll try and go through some of them. So if you think of TI is static because it's like you have an INTP, they have a fixed theory. It's like it's a fixed model. It's a way, you know, it's not very, you know what I mean? Once you have the model, you're fitting things into the model. If you compare that with, so TI DOMs have more of a fixed model. TE DOMs, they change depending on the evidence. Different evidence comes in, they throw it out. It's like with you. Whereas your TI DOM's much more likely to be stubborn and stick to the theory than eventually, because you know we like a theory. Now the same with FI as well. As you notice with FI DOMs, your FI people, they will have like a fixed opinion on something, and it takes a lot to shift their opinion. You know, because you know what I mean. There's lots of fixed emotions on there. FE, if we say FE is someone is receptive to the emotional atmosphere around them, they're receptive to the emotions that the other person's giving off. So their mood changes, is dynamic. And so if somebody is giving them like positive vibes and like they lit up, so their mood is easy to change depending on what emotions are coming towards them. If someone's giving them positive vibes, it makes them feel, so it's easier to change their mood. So that's a judging function. So you can see like a clear divide in the judging functions, that TI and FI, static. Like your FI type, staying true to yourself. A lot of people, they stick true to their principles, their beliefs. It takes a lot to shift them. It takes a lot to shift people from that. Now it gets a little bit more abstract. SI, if we say SI is subjective sensing in terms of someone's own internal dynamic state, like just the kind of like mood they're in, like just like how they feel on that particular day, like how they react to they're sort of like their internal bodily harmony, their sort of homeostasis, and that is dynamic, like just how they feel on that particular day. Like, and sometimes, so the idea is that these types that are dynamic, like say in Socionics, like the SI DOMs are much moodier for, say, they're very sensitive to how they feel in their environment. So for instance, I suppose this is true. You put an SI DOM in a room and they don't like the decor, they're feeling it a lot more. It sort of gets to them. It's their internal state. And people also, because I've talked to Victor about this, where it's internal behavior, external behavior. If you looked at SJs, you would say they're static in their behavior, because like they do the same thing, they're very procedural. So you go, how are they dynamic then? Well, what then you could say is internally they're dynamic. And you have an ISTJ relative. Maybe you can say that the external structure is a compensation for internal dynamic disharmony. And so it's like external disorder will get on their nerves, and they like try to order their external environment in order to try to make themselves more calm. Whereas static types, especially say SPs, are not as irked by SE DOMs. They can live in a messy environment. It doesn't really get to them. But they might think they would. SE DOMs are more likely to, if they're going to live somewhere nice or have something nice, it's like as a status to show other people. Look at the bachelor pad chick, something like that. You know what I mean? Like have a nice. It's usually that sort of thing, where it's for a different reason. Like, and I'm a little bit like that with the SI, because I value SI. It's like bad decor. It can get on my nerves and make me feel ill. But that's like the extreme example of what the SI is like. They're very sensitive to sensing things, aesthetic things. They're aesthetes. Right. What else have we got? Dynamic, NI. Time, change. Very dynamic.
See, and that's what I thought of when I read this. What stuck out to me the most was the last bit, that overlooks their state at a given moment. Yeah.
However, there's one aspect though of the SI is, of course, SI I believe is about three different things. It's subjective sensing, like the artistic vision. You've got a memory. I think the thing that connects all three versions of SI. So we've got the Guardian type of SI, which is like by the book, procedural logic, traditions, conventional, all that kind of thing. Then we've got the Jungian version of SI, which is like subjective sensing. Like, it's like I said, if I suppose an example could be if you had 10 artists paint the same thing, irrespective of their technique, but maybe the way they see things, their subjective view of things, that's part of it. And then the third part of it is, as I said with Socionics, the internal harmony thing. So, but like I said, if you look at SJs, you would say they're static, and they're static when it comes to time as well. So for instance, you can have an SJ plan. I know I've heard a female ESFJ say that she plans 6 months in advance. But that if the plan goes out the window, if something happens where the plan goes awry, she does not like that. She does not like to adapt to that. So I think SJs assume the future is going to be like now, or it's going to be a steady extrapolation of now. Whereas I believe the NI types, they're more likely to see the change. So that's why I don't call it time, I call it change. Right, so the NTJs can see trends in like material trends, like say technology or business. The NFJs, they see trends, group movements. Maybe like they know what to appeal to. Like it's been suggested that Hitler wasn't actually that anti-Jewish, but then he found, oh, it works, so that he appeals a bit more to that. And then he got properly anti-Jewish, of course. I'll just put that rider in there, as we know. And INFJs, they try to change people. And as we talk about in future with romance styles, INFJs are attracted to the bad boy girl. They see that as exciting. And if you get them to acknowledge the bad part, they think that they can change them and improve them because they think they can change anyone. Again, change with the FE, they think it can change people. NFs are catalysts. Behrens calls them catalysts. What else did we do? Here's where it gets weird. NE and SE are both said to be static, which for SE is mental. If you're using Dario's definition, if you're using like the definition of SE that I go with, immersing yourself in the present context. You are dynamic. You are responsive to the environment. That is a highly dynamic state, opposite of a rigid state. So you can have this weird situation where you can say, oh, so Socionics would say the SI DOM is dynamic. Well, they are in a certain way, but not in terms of their behavior. This is it. I've worked it out now. I've remembered now. And this is how you've got to think about internal, external. SPs are static in terms of their mood. It's hard to change their mood. Their behavior is dynamic because they you know what I mean. If you see SPs, it's hard to upset them. Because it's like they could like set each other on fire, and I don't really get that word. You know what I mean? It's hard to piss them off. It's easier to piss off an ESTJ than an ESTP, I would say. It takes a lot to annoy SPs because you can see SPs larking around, like playing practical jokes on her, and other types would be like, I'd be absolutely infuriated by that. Do you know what I mean? It's like it takes a lot to get them angry. Because they're usually static, and that's why they're not worried by things. And, you know, like I said before, like the SJ's usually worried. So again, external things, dynamic, can affect their dynamic mood. So internally, SPs are static, which might then say they're bored out of their minds, and as a compensation, they're dynamic in their behavior. Right. So you see how it's quite complicated. It requires quite a bit of. Over the months, I've tried to get this right in my mind, try to like pretzel it into something that works. But it's interesting, and the most useful part of it is, like I said, it works better with some functions. Like with the judging functions, I think it works well. It's hard to get FR people to shift, their opinions, shift their beliefs, because you're sort of asking them to change. It's hard to get them to change. All right, so we're going with dynamic, and we'll click on dynamic, and that has folks, automatically eliminated all these types in light grey, and I'll let you know who the I'll say who they are at the end, who the types are at the end. I don't want to give any information away to prejudice. Yeah, I'll let people guess along themselves. So we go positive, negative.
Yeah, honestly, I'm pretty negative.
I'll just say that you're still alive. One of these 4 types is INTJ, NiTx as I call it. So you're still alive. Now. Oh yes, and also if you get to a dichotomy that's a bit crap and that you can't really decide, we'll skip. We'll skip that. So asking, declaring.
Okay, yeah, again, this is pretty easy. If I don't, I mean, okay, I'll click on my score. We talked about this once. I think we were out, and you were like so, I don't know, you almost like creeped up on it, like, so
accommodator.
Schedule it.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, no, we're scheduling this here. We're doing this now. So it's a big difference between us. So I'm going to click back on Ben's square here. Yep. Definitely say I'm more of a declaring person than an asking person.
And you're still alive. You're still alive. One of these 2 types. Yeah, go on.
Well, I was just going to add one bit. Because he or she is more interested in self-expression than hearing the other person. That kind of sounds, but I mean, that's true. It's not that I don't want to hear the other person, but yeah, that's a big thing for me, being able to, like, staying true to yourself.
Right.
Okay.
Right, then we've got... So as soon as she picks the wrong one, folks, she will die. So she has to pick the right ones or she will die. So tactical, strategic.
Okay. Yeah, let me read through these here. The path. Choose the goal. The goal. Okay, so I'm going to have you give me an example, but before I do, just based on what I read, I would say I would choose tactical to change the goal than the chosen tactics. Yeah. Cares more about the path, which is the order of steps and actions, versus cares more about the goal and the desired state of things. Yeah, I would go with tactical, but I think I'm going to have you give me an example.
Right.
My first.
Okay. Okay, the tactical one seems to be more interested in the process. The strategic is more interested in the goal. So, for instance, when it says there, finds it easy to change the goal than the chosen tactics, they don't really want to change their process. Whereas the strategic types find it easy to set their goal than decide the next step.
Well, I mean, you're not really telling me anything that.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I forgot about that. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
See, I also have to think about how much I agree with this, whether it fits Kersey or not. Because like I said, if anything contradicts Kersey, I tend to go with Kersey. I've been influenced quite a bit by Jeff in this respect, but I also see, I agree a lot with Kersey in this. So for instance, I can give an example. The man in the headlines at the moment, Donald Trump, tactical, not strategic. He thinks short term. There's a word called political expediency. They say what they need in order to achieve the next step. So they will say things, you know, so for instance, you'll say things to win a primary that might not be great in a general election. And so the SP they'll do, whereas now the upside of that is they always take the right step in the moment. Now, if you think too much on the future, if you have too much long term, if something happens in the short term and you don't adjust to it because you've got your eyes too much on the future, you're not able to be nimble in the moment. You're not able to adjust. Whereas SPs, you could say they're nimble in the moment, but they don't have that long range plan. So it depends on the circumstances what's better, whether tactics are better or whether strategy is better. It depends on the situation. I mean, usually, if you're being strategic, the factors that you're taking into account, they need to be pretty static, don't they? Because otherwise, if it's a really fluid situation, you can't plan so far in advance, can you, Hailey? You're pretty much in a situation of adapting to a quickly changing situation, which is why in the military they have that phrase, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. So I think it's about being, you've got to have both. You've got to have a plan, and but then INTJs, what INTJs do though is like they have a plan and they have backup plans and contingency plans, and they try to look for where things can go wrong. So they try to plan as much as possible. But okay, this strategic. Right, so for instance, you think, are you more about the goal or the process?
Well, I mean, if we take a look at what I do in the gym,
yeah,
I threw squats out the window, so I threw out the current method in order to reach my goal. I seeked new methods that worked. Wherever that fits.
Well, to me, that's strategic, because cares more about the goal and desired state of things. Other side cares more about the path or the steps and actions. So tactical is about procedure. Yeah,
I guess that would be right, because if I did have that kind of approach, then it would have been a lot harder for me to let go of those conventional methods.
Yeah, and also, we've talked about this before. NTs are adaptable, so they will change the methods. It's your SJs, your concrete cooperators.
Right. Okay.
They're more procedural. They're by the book, because they place trust in the authority behind the book. They need somebody to show them another book. So like I said, I mean, if you want to convince people that the NASM's rubbish, show them stuff by Schoenfeld. Because then it's like, exactly. Here's an authority.
Yeah.
Right, so let's go for strategic.
Yeah, oh, and that's something I do need to do.
You just died.
Oh, I died?
I died, but your initial instinct was to go for tactical. Okay, let's talk about that. Why did you choose... why did you initially go for tactical? That's interesting.
I think I read cares more about the path, and I thought about like the path of getting to my goal. What path is like the right steps? Like even though now are considered unconventional. Yeah, that's what I thought about when I read tactical. So. And like I said earlier, I wanted to have you give me some examples if I didn't understand them. And yeah.
Yeah, I got a little bit.
This is probably one of those.
Okay, this you see, one of the things I think I can now contradict everything I've just said. Like, this is the beauty of TI, where you can just like go to the other side and give a different argument It's like a lawyer that's taught to argue from different sides. Okay, I'm now given. I was using a bit more Kersey. Now I'll go to a different point of view. Okay. Okay, here's an example. Right. I can contrast INTP with INTJ. INTJ with that TE, maybe they are more likely to stick to the path, to stick to the procedure. And the INTP is more likely to switch. So the INTP is listed as strategic and the INTJ is listed as tactical. But you see, there's a lot of nuances involved in how they are. It is true, I would say, that NTJs, actually not NTJs, INTJ, like once they get stuck on a path, they might stick to their procedure. But I mean,
you have to take into account like the path that I'm seeking out. Yeah, maybe initially I was a dumbass and I didn't about what to do. But once I spent the time and I learned like the right things to do, and I knew for a fact like this is what's going to get me to the goal, like I'm sticking with that.
Yeah.
And evidence comes up, which will totally screw me for a loop.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But if that doesn't, if reality doesn't butt its head in and like give you a veto, generally you do like to stick to a plan and a procedure.
Yep.
So I mean, just like in your day-to-day activities, you'll think about steps and actions and be more. I mean, I have the problem of doing too much. I had they call it. They've got a problem with the F-35 program where they're both redesigning the aircraft and building them at the same time, and they call that concurrency because you're doing two things at the same time, and that's the problem INTPs have and ENTPs. Concurrency. It's not focusing on one thing. It's like switching between things.
I hate that. Yeah, I am not a multitasker. I mean, I can, but it stresses me out.
I'm not a I can only do one thing at a time, but I can switch between things.
I don't like doing that. I like to get one thing done, like finish it totally.
You actually get it done. Whereas NTPs, it's like all of these things, like, and then 10 years later they've got the same plans. What happens is we get bored. We do, we'll do this other thing, do that thing.
Okay.
Whereas INTJs, they have that ability, like number one type to be like, if you're like in IT, it looks like in a technology area, they're like the ones to focus on something and just go super depth. Like, right. Okay, so we could say that there's a way of picking. We could pick. If we pick tactical, then Balzac's still alive.
Oh, that's the one I need to keep alive.
But you see, folks, there's a lot of interpretation with tactical.
So what system, like, what is this following? Like, you said that you were talking about the Kersey, like you were bringing Kersey into it, but what is this following? This is
proper socionics.
Okay.
Right.
Proceeds the meaning of the emotional. Okay, motive. Okay, well, obviously, yeah, I'm not emotive. And I'm not just saying that because I'm reading it. I mean, reading the word. It's first precedes the emotional implication. Yeah, no. Typical of him or her to adjust to the other person's mood. Yeah, no, sorry.
Let's see. Oh, still alive. Unedible, Zach's still alive. So what we can say, folks, is with this tactical strategic, it was a little bit iffy because initially Hailey did pick tactical. And with this one, you were very strong on constructive. And Honoré de Balzac, which is ILI, which is NiTx, as I call it, is because, you know, INTJs are good at TI. So I'm saying NiTx. Now, dyadic traits. Right.
Okay, can you give me an example?
Of what? INTJ has been... Oh, the next one, rational, irrational.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I cut you off and you were going to say something.
No, that's okay. Okay. This is where you really got to go on the internal, not external behavior, because externally, basically this is judging versus perceiving. Now, in Socionica, and actually in Carl Jung as well, he would have described NiTx as an introverted, irrational type, because the lead function is irrational. NiTx, that's INTJ, and NiTx interacts in the world, though, in a structured way. But internally, they are dynamic, and they have that weird Ni thing going on, where you perceive change and stuff. Like, for instance, you said you were once in the gym and you saw all these change and how this was like this and all that weird stuff going on. And you would probably say, you know, it's, and also Ni is one of these things that's hard to explain apparently, because I keep asking NJs, what is this Ni stuff? It doesn't make much sense to me. Whereas rational, right, okay, so what I would do is information comes in and I fit it to a model, fit it to my experience. So I would say internally I'm organized, but externally I'm not.
Gotcha.
But the NE, I'm switching
Gotcha.
between
We
things.
talked about this, yeah.
It's the internal, external. That, and you've talked about how internally you are like fluid. You got this loop of Ni and Fi. It's so like externally you've got it together. Externally,
but internally I'm majorly. Yeah. Okay. You know, and whoever wrote this, I mean, are they taking into account how this sounds? I mean, for someone taking this test, if they're trying to impress someone and they read, take in incoming information directly without assessing it. I mean, just from reading that, who's gonna want to say, oh, that's what I do? I mean, without.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know. It's tricky.
Yep.
So
but I know what you mean about the PJ thing. So with that being said, yeah, irrational.
Also, INTJs might, let's say, unless there's like a TE thing where it's like this works, this doesn't work, it's they might be more accepting of information to like take all the information in. I don't know if you maybe could give me an example of that, of like.
Well, for me, that kind of, like, when you say that, I think about the whole mile wide, inch deep, and the inch wide, mile deep, that when we compare and contrast ourselves. For something of, like, my study, like the hypertrophy, that kind of stuff, I criticize the crap out of it because this is what I know best. And so it's pretty easy for me to, like, process that really quickly, but other things that I don't really know, not so much. So you said something a little bit ago about TE. Like, what did you say about TE?
It's
relating to the irrational, rational.
It's like if it's like information that can be processed by TE. So it's like anything that's like scientific, like in terms of like, say, Dario calls it he calls it like measuring for success, where you're thinking about practicalities. Does it work? The scientific method, right? And of course, science is very TE in terms of like it's, as Carl Jung would say, it's objective thinking. It's like, say, in other aspects of your life where things are not as clear cut. Maybe it's like you're taking the information and sort of withholding a judgment because that kind of thing is not easy to apply Whereas TI will try to judge everything, will try to judge more things because it's not, because it's subjective judging, it's a subjective thinking. So TI has a wider scope of use. TE is a narrower scope of use because it relies on data, reliable data that it can. So it's, I would say TE is more narrow but more reliable, and TI is more. And like ESTPs, they can TI some bull, so they could use their TI and come up with some elaborate lies on the moment, on the fly, in the moment, to suit their needs.
Okay, so the next one is really easy for me. Just reading the first line on result-oriented. I can multitask, but I don't like to multitask. And also, the process-oriented says it's typical of him or her to do the work from the beginning to the end without switching. That's, if I was just left alone, that is exactly what I would do. Yeah.
Right, let's have a look. And Balzac's still alive. So far, folks, the only one that half killed Balzac was tactical strategic, and that was, we were and ahhing on that. Right, obstinate and yielder.
Yeah, the first line of obstinate. That, yeah.
So you're pretty
Definitely
clear
go
on
with that
obstinate.
one.
Okay, here we go. Let's see what happens. Oh, still alive. I know the Balzac still alive. Carefree and farsighted.
Yeah, just reading the words. I don't feel like I'm a carefree person. Overlooking the previous experience. Strives to foresee everything. Yeah, I would definitely farsighted.
See what happens. Balzac's still alive. Reasonable and decisive.
Okay, decisive. The last bit for reasonable just kills it for me. Finds it hard to function on the spot without external motivation. Yeah, no. And then for the decisive, yeah, finds it hard to relax without the help of others. Yeah.
So alive. Quadrate trait, that's gamma quadra, because that decisive NI. Reasonable is this is more NE. Yeah, this is more NE. This is like because of NE and SI, and this is SE and NI, decisive. So it's like NI sees the goal, SE has the willpower to execute the goal. Now, we NE types would say, yeah, but that's because you only see one option. We see all the options. We can't decide. And we can't be bothered anyway, because we just want to relax. Right. Although that's not true, though, if you think of that ESTJ. Right. But yeah, the thing is with the ESTJ, though, when they're not at work, they're relaxed big time. There's a difference between ENTJ, like Chad said in the E8 video, that he like doesn't get much sleep, I think, and like ENTJs like work a lot. ESTJs, when they work a lot when they're at work, when they're not at work, they're going to relax. Because it's like clear boundaries, work, non-work, for ESTJs. And that's where that SI thing has value with the Socionics version of SI about comfort sensing.
Okay, yeah, next one.
Subjective.
Definitely objective.
Okay, definitely.
Yeah, what kills it really for me, for the subjective, is places major importance on this person's reputation. Yeah, nope.
Okay. Still alive! Balzac's still alive! Right, aristocratic, democratic.
Sees people as members of a group. No, anymore. It's the other one.
Democratic.
I'll read. Hold on. Let me read it anyway. Let me just read it just in case. Yeah. Go with Democratic.
Still alive. There we go. So the only one, and like I said, if it should have picked the wrong one in quotation marks, Balzac would have died. So all the right ones had to be picked. Right, now of course we can do the these ones, of course. Well, these ones are easy. Introvert or extrovert?
Yeah, you know what really kind of aggravates me, and this gets back into our whole introvert extrovert discussion, is when people watch my videos and they say like, such an extrovert over your video. I'm like, why? Because I'm talking. Like, is that not the purpose of like? Yeah, it's go with.
What you could do in future? You could do a future you could do a video in future about why I may appear as an extrovert in certain situations. You can say, well, I've learned these things because of these skills I've learned, and like.
We'll have to add that to your list of future video.
And you can say skills I've learnt and southern charm. You could say it's southern charm as well.
Fair.
Which is true. I mean, like if you compare like New York, like you have this thing of like people on the subway not talking to each other. Like if that's like the culture of like a bit of like more FI, like don't talk to me. Like, whereas does that the regional thing, regional expectations can be big as well. Just like body language is regional, as we've mentioned before. So what about intuiting sensing?
But because of poor digestion, doesn't keep it in memory for too long. Is this why I can't remember anyone's name? Seriously, I'm so bad at remembering names.
Oh, there we go, folks. Okay, now let's. Okay, how do I unselect? I forgot how to unselect. There's a little unselect all traits, right? So let's see what I would do. Okay, well these ones are obvious, but me, static, negative, asking.
Yeah, asking.
Yeah, Robespierre, and that's ISFP, Dreiser. Yes, and again, already Robespierre, strategic. Constructive, emotive. I don't know with that one. I don't know, maybe emotive. Yep, emotive. Well, rational and irrational, the problem is I know which one it is. Yeah, I do relate it to rational. No. Result type. Right, yielding, obstinate. Actually, no, quite yielding, actually. Oh, I just killed myself. It depends what it is. It's hard to change. It depends what it is. Yeah. I think what it is, I think what it is I pretend to change my mind, but I haven't. Because I'm being accommodating.
So who actually made this? Who made this test?
I think it's a Russian guy. He's got Zek Healing. Yeah, that's your TE nature. Who did it? Who are these sources? All this kind of stuff.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, remember what I said about static? About hard to change a TI DOM's like an F, like, so that would be that one for carefree, farsighted, quadric, well, not decisive, reasonable, subjective, objective. Members of a group hierarchy, social rather than as individuals. I don't know about that one. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, bit subjective. Right, anyway, so let's try and find out about this person behind this test. Mikhail. So, you know, probably Russian Mikhail.
Yeah.
A Slavic type name. Oh, wikisocion.org. Oh, so it is linked to wikisocion.org. Right, so Reinin traits. Let's show the audience a bit of this. It can be quite complex. There's quite a bit on them. There's a whole table there. And then this is something on the mathematics of it, which I've not looked into.
Yeah, that seems like it would be really interesting to learn about.
Well, maybe in future, once I've read the PDF. But, you know, I have other PDFs to read, such as the one by Brad.
Yeah.
Right, what I can do is I can now show someone a, I'll just stop that, and I'll show someone a diagram. I'll show, before we end, I'll show someone a diagram of a I think it's called a Fano pyramid or something. So it worked for you. Now other people it doesn't work for us. But it's, like I said, if we're testing the test, it was okay, wasn't it? I mean, it was like tactical and strategic was the one.
Yeah.
Right, so if we go to that diagram, how the hell did that get in there? Oh my God!
Gosh, he cussed.
Pardon?
Guys, he never.
What did I say?
Ever.
What did I
can't
say?
believe it. He said, which isn't really bad, but remotely bad. You wouldn't curse if you had your mouth full. Seriously. Here I am, like, dropping F-bombs all day, and he's like, just
Right, here we go. I actually found something. You see, what it was is I saw this thing about the beard tax that I thought you might find amusing.
The what tax?
Tax in Russia. There you go, look. Emperor Peter, it would be Peter the Great of Russia, instituted a beard tax to modernize the society of Russia following European models.
Okay, this is getting back to the inch wide, mile deep, because yeah.
Hey, I'm a bit more than an inch deep. Oh yeah, this guy's a real INTJ. That's like extreme INTJ. What are you doing looking at me? Kind of thing. Oh yeah, and here he is, right, in his blanket, talking about how, and he'll be talking about how INTJs don't value comfort. Because it's not part of the quadra. It'd say like Gamma Quadrant does not value SI. It looks like you're valuing comfort there, Rowan.
That's great.
Right, here's another one, and then I'll go over to this diagram over here. Beard tax in Russia during Peter the Great's reign, paid by anyone who had a beard. In some Islamic countries, it's the opposite way around.
Yeah.
You got to wear a beard. Right, Reinin. This is some of the mathematics of how the traits are related to each other. Now, there's one that I find a little bit dodgy. Merry, serious. The idea is that people with FE are merry, people who value FE are merry, and people with FI are serious. But as I mentioned before, ESFP and ENFP are merry, but they use FE. It's a very strong unvalued function. So, for instance, I would say ESFP is SEFX. They have the FE, but it's used to suit their own attention whoring ways. And for the ENFP, they're using FE for their crazy course or something. Hey, let's go to the Bernie Sanders rally. Right. That sort of thing. But in general, your FI types are seen as more serious rather than so if you compare, say, INFP, serious, but like I said, the creative function, the Galenko creative function, ESFP and ENFP break that rule, in my opinion. So you have to look carefully. In certain circumstances, the seriousness of the ESFP will come through when it gets on a value that they hold strong. So nuances is what it's about. Nuances. I think that's
that about all?
That's about it. We could maybe do a separate hangout in future where I test Hailey on real British food with funny names versus British food with names I've made up, and to see if she can tell the difference.
Yeah, because almost everything you tell me, like when you're going to eat something, you tell me the name of it, and it sounds so strange.
Like which one's real? Bubble and Squeak, is that real or fake? Green Policeman, is that green or fake? Which one's real and which one's fake?
Yeah, I don't know. All I do know is that we are at the end of this hangout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Decisive.
That's it from me. Ben,
Decisive
last words.
Yes. So those doubters out there who don't think Hailey is an INTJ and an NiTx, well, there's more evidence for you. And I could also say maybe she's self-dualized and has a bit of an ESFP in her. So you could say, she dresses. If we're going using stereotypes, we could say she dresses like an ESFP because it's the internal ESFP. And Dario has joked about his inner ESFP, so we could say it's that, amongst other things. Perhaps. If you're trying to find no reason, if people are going to bring up appearances, we can say, okay, inner ESFP, folks. Yeah.
Fair. Okay.
And I've got an inner ESFJ. Yes, bye-bye. I'll go bake a cake now.
Go over here to and
Pardon?
Okay, yeah, we're going to say
I'm off to bake a cake, folks. Inner ESFJ.
Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.